same type of concept here, but what I was watching earlier today was an episode of The Magic School Bus. Does anyone know that? My son's kind of past that kind of age range, but we were sitting here at home and I thought, well, why don't we throw that on and check it out. We noticed it was available on streaming, and that was a little educational cartoon that we used to watch when he was, I don't know how old he was, some age range in there. But anyways, this one, they happened to go to, it was space, but I think they were supposed to be on Mars or something like that, and I thought, yeah, there's some kind of cool landscapes there in the background. And I thought I would try something like that, kind of red planet type of thing, a lot of iron in the soil, and just overall geology. And I don't think I've done something like that before, so I thought I'd try. Alright, so I picked out a lot of warm tones here, really mixed and matched, you know, some Marvy, Memento, potter's clay, rich cocoa, distressing fired brick, antique linen. Let's see if I can find my, walnut stain here. So what you do is you just kind of grab out whatever colors, you think would be appropriate for whatever color scheme you want to go for, and just to grab those and pull them all out. And like I said, what we'll be doing is we'll be mix and matching all of these different paths, right? All right, so this is the boulders. Which boulders is this one? I can't remember. Is it boulders with lichen? No, boulders with lichens, that kind of longer one. Brookside boulders right here. Okay. Couldn't think of the name there for a minute. I know most of my stamps up to a certain point, but if I haven't used them for a while. But anyways, I did 2 impressions with it right down here. Provides a really good either foreground, but it can also be used kind of in the background. This looks actually pretty nice. If I put a couple of these back here, then we can kind of create this little pool, right, of water. So I'm going to have to do that sometime. Actually, that looks like a really cool idea for just a quiet, intimate pool here. All right, so that has been used right there. Now I'm going to try to create a lot of depth in this scene. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it. There's a lot of different designs we can use, a lot of choices. So I was thinking about kind of this, kind of desert terrain in here. Kind of going back into the distance with some towering mountains in the very distant areas. This is real similar to a composition that I just did, but I thought I'd use a lot of the same designs again. I thought it would be really quite appropriate for the subject matter here. All right, now what I'm doing here is I'm going to utilize some of the colors out of my color scheme to represent more distant objects, okay? So that's what you do. You just kind of figure out what kind of color scheme you're going after, all right? And then the concept is that you utilize those same colors that you're going to color your scene with in the imagery. This is one way to do it. You can stamp everything in black if you want to. But if you utilize color and then utilize those colors to color in, what your color scheme ends up representing is light in the scene, okay? So, objects are kind of defined by light. The objects farther in the distance represent kind of a more distant object for that light to travel back to, the eye of the viewer. So, if there's kind of this reddish, warm light in the sky here, and browns, it's kind of being broken up and all this dust and things like that in the sediment in the atmosphere. So things look, kind of darker in the distance there. I'll show you what that means when I get to it, if you haven't watched these videos before. Okay, now I also wiped off some of the bottom of this stamp right here so that it would stamp out lighter at the base. I think I'm going to put this kind of this haze down in here, kind of like a dusty haze into the atmosphere to give the scene kind of more mood and visual depth. Alright, so this is just a dark brown that I'm stamping these kind of more towering, distant mountains in. Okay, and I'll wipe off the bottom of this one the same way that I did with the tall peak. This is the rocky peaks here. Okay, see that? You just kind of overlap, just like I overlapped this one here. I think it was some red that some of those mountain ranges on Mars. I don't know, it makes things like Mount Everest here look like nothing, I think. I think that was Mars. Alright, so we have this range of mountains, we have this kind of valley down here below. And let's put something else into that valley, huh? These are typically used for little islands. This one's called Isle Medium, I think this one is. Isle Medium 2? I don't know, I can't even remember the names of some of my own stamps. The island ones, I just don't remember. There's like Isle Large, Isle Medium, and then there's like an Isle Medium 2, and then there's Isle Medium 2, Large and Small, or something like that, so I don't know. Couldn't think of any way to name it. I used to work for this other company where a lot of their naming conventions got a lot of stores confused, like a goose or something like that with a Easter basket might be named, I don't know, just some name, instead of a goose with basket or something like that. So I always remembered that when he told me that, so I'm pretty, straightforward as far as my naming conventions go, Pier, Seaside Cove, not anything too poetic, but, reasonably descriptive and kind of straight to the point. Alright, so you can see that one right there. I stamped it a little bit lighter, and I kind of wiped off the bottom. You see the difference between these two? Alright, so little kind of hills in between us and the more distant mountain. I just used a little bit more of that one right there. Okay. The red planet. Could be here on Earth. Could be somewhere in Arizona, Utah, that type of area. Some of my favorite places. Definitely. I love the desert. And, I love the desert air and maybe when I'm hiking and things like that. I do love plush areas with a lot of waterfalls and greenery and, this time of year, wildflowers and so on and so forth. But I get attacked by mosquitoes like crazy, and I really hate hiking with kind of mosquitoes and biting flies kind of, flying around me. Some people they don't bother. Some people, I'm one of those people that, they like my blood or something. So I most definitely get bothered by them. Okay, this is tiny rocks here. It's just something to kind of get a little bit of a change in texture down here. I don't know if that will read by the time I blend in a lot of tones over the top of it, but we'll see. If it disappears, you can always stamp it out in a darker tone right over the top of it, right? So there's no point in going, there's no time where you can't go back and add more imagery right into these things if the images that you first utilize disappear through the process of coloring. All right, so this is cloud space right here. I was thinking about some different cloud textures in the back. That's the thing that kind of got me wanting to do this scene was in that Magic School Bus, they were on this red planet type of thing, and the way they did their sky, I thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting sky right there. So I'm going to add, mine will be a little bit different. They didn't have like this cloud space type of terrain in here, you know, or texture, but they just had these kind of streaks of kind of red and white up there in the sky. And I thought, well, let's see what we can do with that. Let's add that to our sky, or, you know, with what we attempt here. Okay, like that. I'll just give another impression right down there. Okay, so we have our layout here. Half-page scene. I wanted a little bit of extra space to work with. I haven't been doing that a lot, but I don't know, I've been changing up on a lot of my kind of typical stamping conventions, changing media, changing color schemes, the formats. I mean, there's a lot of other things that I haven't done. I haven't been stamping like on square formats, and I wish I had some kind of circle template, you know, so you can stamp on circles and ovals and things like that. I don't know, I do have some templates, but I just haven't gotten around to cutting out those ovals and things like that. But that would be kind of the you know, angular types of formats would be really cool to work on. All right, so the fun begins here. Let's get started with some toning. Let's see if I have a reasonably clean applicator. I probably don't. It looks like I have black in this one. You can see what colors I've been using here. I'm not someone that really worries too much about kind of the pollution of one ink into another. I mean, I don't want to go with a sopping wet applicator like this into my lightest color that I'm using, but, you know, as long as I take most of it off, I'm good. Yeah, maybe I need to take off a little bit more, but all right. So that being said, when I start using this antique linen, walnut stain, antique linen here, it might not look like antique linen because I have some black that's still in this tip right here, but there's going to be so much change in, you know, the terrain here and this base layer color that I start off with, so it just doesn't really matter too much. I mean, this is going to play a factor in the overall color scheme and composition, but it's not going to ruin anything if antique linen doesn't look exactly like antique linen here. It's more of a kind of grayish antique linen. It'll you know, this will come out here. See, it's getting a little bit more just straight antique linen right now, you know, because I've applied it a few times up here so far, so not a problem. Okay, all right, I'm going to keep a little bit of this base here of, you know, some of these more distant mountains a little bit lighter because I want to add a little bit of pigmenting to kind of give it this haze, this illuminated haze type of look here in the end result, so when I get to that. All right, a little bit more in the sky. Okay, kind of adding it on. I'm kind of utilizing value for a little bit of, you know, kind of interplay between lights and darks. This is a really light color to begin with, so. But the areas, I am retaining some of the areas of white, okay? There's not too much of it, but there's a little bit. Okay, and that's kind of the lighting scheme that I will kind of follow through the rest of the colors that I'll end up using. Okay, so retention of some lights to represent both kind of light source. There's just a little bit of a horizon glow here, and the reflected light coming off the ground somewhere. And then kind of I hit some areas like on these rocks right here, the distant mountains, or the nearby rocks right here to represent shadow. If you don't know where to put it when you're on your first color, you can kind of put it anywhere, but I'm kind of applying it, primarily in terms of a thicker saturation and more layering in the darker areas. So you can see this area that's darker on this rock, I'll hit that a little bit more. Sometimes it doesn't get very much darker because we already have a good saturation there. Well, you don't have to apply any more there, but if you can get darker using your existing color, whatever that is at any given time, then use more than that. Use more of that in those areas, kind of before you get to the next color. Okay, so you know when to move on to your next color when kind of the darkest areas that you're going to establish are as dark as they're going to get using that existing color. Okay, see that's right up here. I can add more. It gets a little bit darker, but not too much, so I know that it's probably really close to time that I move on to my next tone. Okay, so you can get darker using more ink at times, but eventually, in other words, you'll get to a kind of a super saturation of that tone. And see that this is one of the things that's really nice about starting with a very light value right here. It really allows us, the opportunity to kind of establish somewhat of a lighting scheme right here. Do you see that kind of lighting scheme that's working? There's a little bit of horizon glow. It gets darker up here. There's certain areas that are darker and lighter throughout the mountain range. And then throughout this kind of lower kind of valley area, there's some lights and darks within that space. I figured I'd go pretty dark over here. But I mean, it's not a big commitment to this entire lighting scheme, so, you can kind of play around with it, see what you like, and then if you don't like it, like certain areas you think, oh my gosh, I don't like that so dark over there. Well, what you do is, if you don't like it so dark here, then what you do is you bring in your darker tones and add it around that area, and by contrast, the area that you don't want to, be so dark will look lighter by contrast, okay? I mean, you can't kind of manipulate things too much by the time you get into the really dark tones, but when you're on your first few colors, couple colors, especially if they're as light as this one that I'm using right here, there's plenty of opportunities to kind of change the spirit of what has been applied, especially when you're just on one color. Your first one, it's just very light. That's not to say that you can't do these scenes and just go right on with black. We did some of that in Stampscapes University. I kind of just went on with gray, which is kind of light, but you can kind of just do it with black as well. It gives it a different look. This is just one way of doing a given technique. This is walnut stain right here. This is brown. It's a kind of a warm brown. It's another distress ink. Kind of those earthy kind of colors, mellow, kind of the opposite of what I've been doing in the form of the those sunset scenes and a couple recent scenes that are really saturated and super bright in tones. These ones are much more kind of aged and mellow. So I like a range of intensity, so I do like working in both, and a lot of times I like having them both in one scene. I like the mellow to contrast against the super bright hot tones as well. So with me, it's not an either or. Do you use these colors or do you use those colors, when using these, stamps? Well, you use the media for whatever kind of mood or essence you want a scene to have, right? Doesn't have to be inks, could be pastels or chalks. I don't know what this would look like in embossing or something like that. You know, someone might emboss all these images in white onto a dark piece of paper and kind of start applying different things like light pigmentings in there to, I don't know, create some kind of atmospheric effects or whatever. All kinds of things, okay? Alright, but I'm kind of going along right now. I'm kind of adding this into roughly the same areas that I added the previous color, sticking with my kind of lighting scheme that I've established in here. And what I mean by that is I'm just not toning everything out, you know. If I left some areas light with the previous color, if I like that lighting kind of shading convention that was started, then I'll just keep sticking with that lighting scheme throughout this entire coloring process. Kind of getting a little bit more of a warmer tinge to this. I start doing a lot of this type of thing right here. Okay? I mean, if you can do that, that's what I'm doing, I don't know, 90% of the time when I'm coloring. Just kind of a tapered streak, okay? Now my thing is that people, when they first start doing this, they just don't stay in an area as long as I do. See this, how I keep staying there? I'm just not moving. I'm kind of moving a little bit, kind of to make that a little bit wider. What people want to do is they go like this, okay? Because they want to get this whole area. They're thinking of a whole area. They're not thinking of kind of like this flame type of shape here and developing it and kind of pulling it out like you're pulling on a, I don't know what it would be, what the analogy would be. It's like you're just developing one thing, like a flame or something like that. It's like silly putty or something like that. Like you're stretching this one thing out and extending it, okay? So watch this. So see from over here in the shadow, coming in like that, and I'm bringing it out. And I'm bringing it out this way. Let me see if I can do it with a paper towel here, okay? You just kind of ink it up like so. Pretty good amount of ink on it, okay? This is like finger painting, okay? And you can just kind of really stretch it out like that. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes the paper towel is even more comfortable and ergonomic of a tool. It's a really great tool. You go in and kind of, you know, blend some colors around like that. Watch this one over here, okay? See that? I'm kind of staying there. Okay. Add it onto your rocks like this. It's a very good tool, okay? Utilize some different tools that you have kind of lying around the house. It could be an old rag, napkins, paper towels, kitchen sponges, okay? I've used the kitchen sponge and that works fantastic. An old one at that. It was one that, you know, was pretty much ready for the trash. Yeah, here it is right here. So this one right here. Just this ratty old, I wouldn't use the scouring side, I'd use the softer side, but this worked fine. It isn't my tool of choice, you know, but it works. The thing is that you just develop your areas and don't rush it, okay? And when I say don't rush it, it's not like it's, you know, each color takes forever. The first color took a while because I get the most amount of coverage out of it, but, you know, when you get into these darker tones, you're just not using it quite as much. Darker ones tend to be a little bit more perimeter oriented. All right, but we're still kind of not into that kind of color scheme that we're going after here. So that was antique linen and walnut stain. Let's try the fired brick. I don't use this one too much. I don't use red too much in general, okay? I don't have anything against red. I just, sunsets. When it comes to scenes, we're talking usually sunset, sunrise type thing, types of times a day. Okay, adding that into that mountain. This is pretty reddish, so I think I want to definitely put kind of an orange in here too. But here comes the red, though, for the red planet. Okay. At some point in time, the surface of this paper cardstock starts getting kind of super saturated, and you can really feel the inks really spread out for you. And I love that kind of texture and surface quality to tone my colors into. Sometimes it kind of gets in the way because the ink doesn't transfer over as fast because the paper is wet and you're kind of applying wet into wet. But it does allow for a really kind of smooth application of that color. It just glides on there kind of effortlessly. And then you can blend it out. Like I can go like that, and you don't want to do that with your first color, but there's so much ink on here now that even if you do it, you're kind of doing that onto a wet surface, and it gives you time to kind of manipulate it, spread it around, and to blend it. Kind of doing this red over that brown right there. When you first kind of streak it in there, it looks like blood. Fired brick over, I don't know, those two other colors. Okay, so that is that. Let's keep moving on here. Let's try the potter's clay, the Memento. I think the potter's clay is lighter than the color that I just used. I don't know. It might be kind of similar, but let's take off some of that ink right there before we go on to the next tone. Okay. You don't need to clean it off completely. I don't want to have a kind of a diluted version, so I'm not washing this off right now. If I did it much earlier and give it time to dry, that'd be fine. But all of my applicators are kind of they need to be washed off. Okay, but potter's clay, Memento inks are pretty thick, so they really glide onto your paper really nicely. They're a good choice as your first color as well. Any of the Memento inks, colors, that are within your color scheme that you're going for. Okay, so blending that in. Yeah, I like what I see. It's really warming up some areas. It's kind of mellowing some out a little bit too. I'm getting rid of some of that white, so I am going into some of that white, but I still want some of that white to be nice and light. So I won't go into it too much. Okay. At some point in time, there's a point in time when a scene really starts to come together, and I'm starting to see it kind of from a color standpoint and a mood standpoint. This is the color for me where I can see it's all kind of coming together now. Things, in this type of blending process, it's not often that you see it kind of coming together like instantly. In terms of mood and the spirit of a piece, the spirit of a piece kind of comes about from kind of lighting Alright, so that served its purpose. That really kind of brought everything together to me. I don't know, what do you think? Okay, a little bit more to some of these rocks in here. I don't know, it seems a little bit more fleshed out to me. I'm almost inclined, with what I've been doing to get rid of that white in there. And I think I might do that. All right. I like to add in these little kind of embellishments with white pigment ink and gel pens and things like that. But the latest ones, I don't know, have been absent of all of that type of embellishment. And I don't think it looks better, it's just different. But I think it might serve the kind of the spirit of this one really nicely to just, I don't know, to forego that type of thing. All right, this is a terracotta from Marvy. The orange would be good too. Here's an ochre. Okay, so now that I got rid of, a lot of those tones, let me go back to terracotta. Terracottas, ochre's lighter than a lot of these colors that I just put on there, but let's just bring it in. Let's add a little bit of more warmth and kind of this yellowish tinge in here, since white will not be the kind of the defining light source characteristic. Okay, hue, whatever tone. It'll be more of this kind of yellowish kind of glow. Actually, it looks pretty good. See that glow in there? It's over the mountains now. It is a different feel, doesn't it, to the rest of it? Yeah. It's definitely warming it up, but there's this kind of this deeper glow now. All right. Right, there's the ochre. Kind of a nice glowy type of feel. I've left a little touch of white down there. Let's go in there a little bit. Let's add a little tinge of color into that. Garbage trucks picking up. If you can hear that in the background, that's what that is. I used to have to kind of look up garbage truck videos on YouTube for my son to watch when he was little. I used to love watching garbage truck videos. So there's compilations of different types of garbage trucks going and just picking up, with millions and millions of views. So I'm sure a lot of other kind of parents had the same, idea. Then you end up watching those videos like over and over and over again, day after day. Okay, so that was ochre. So that worked good. I wasn't planning on using that one, but I think it looks, pretty decent in terms of creating this landscape. Okay, now this is the terracotta here. This is really orange. Ooh, that is really super bright. One of those things about Marvy tones, okay, you can see this being added in here. Not that, I don't make judgments as far as like saying that's the best color or something like that, okay? I do have my opinions about qualities of some inks over some other ones, but as far as like just strictly on color, there's just different types of intensities out there, okay? if you want a really bright intensity like that, Marvy's not a bad way to go. But, okay, I've used all those other brands in here, and they're playing a part in this overall type of end result, this glow here, okay? But this intensity typically is something that the Marvy colors are really good at contributing to your pieces. So, I mean, you could just, you don't have to kind of reinvent everything that you already have, in order to achieve this. You can sandwich, a brighter tone with more muted, mellow colors as well, if you want to get a bright end result. And the bright one will contribute it. It'll boost it up just as if you added dark over light, There's no question, that it'll be darker, but you can do that with intensity too. The intensity could be underneath something or over the top of it, and it'll still read intense. Okay, you can't put I can't really go back to an antique linen and put it over this really bright tone and have it look, more muted. Okay, the bright one's win out, just like putting dark over light. The dark one's going to, kind of win out in that, overall view. All right, it's coming around. So this is either Mars, but if you live in Arizona, this is Arizona, but maybe 10 billion years ago. Okay, so that is terracotta. Let's see what we go with next. Red? No. There's some more browns. Let's try the rich cocoa. I think that's when I stamped out that cloud space in up there. Can't really see the cloud space as much up there anymore, but it's still acting as a nice textural form. Test it, see how that's going to look. Okay, looks just a touch darker. Add it into some shadow areas. Kind of adding it at the base of these hills right down here. Okay. It's not influencing the card too much, the scene. It's just a little touch darker than the colors underneath it. I don't know if you can tell. I mean, I can tell a little bit, if I really kind of build this up like that. And also this surface of this is getting really quite wet. So when I do this, if I kind of streak into it like that, I'm kind of removing ink in a way. So if you want to kind of build it up, then you kind of just tap it like that. You build up these little beads of ink on the surface of your paper, like that. But if you do that, you're kind of wiping some of it off. So you can utilize that for your, for effect. You can kind of do little streaky kind of motions in there and whatnot. Okay, so this is dark brown from Marvy. Maybe I'll add a little bit of this red in there first, okay? Ooh, that red is really bright. So there you go with that Marvy tone, that Marvy intensity. I don't want that all the time though, but when you want it, you know, you can get it. I almost went down too far there. Okay. All right, now let's go back to that dark brown here. Now the dark brown was the color that I stamped out those background mountains in. So this won't look like dark brown for a while because there's a lot of other color in my applicator here, and just for the fact that the page is, you know, really kind of wet right now, so the application, the transfer of ink, takes a little bit longer to do, but you can use that to your advantage by applying some really easy types of blends into the scene, okay? It really blends well at this point in time because, you know, the paper is just so soaked. Kind of coloring in some of my mountains, making the mountain line a little bit more kind of in silhouette against that sky. I'll have it lighter around here where it's kind of light as kind of the light sources kind of peering over the horizon. Putting some tone into the corners here, making the lighter areas seem lighter by having some areas darker. Okay, same thing in the rocks here. Kind of toning out some of the rocks, or darkening some of the rocks to make some of the other parts of the rocks seem lighter by contrast, so we can have some variation right in the close foreground rocks. And trying to put on a little bit of a shadow at the base of this rock outcropping. Same with this one over here in the valley. See how I'm working upside down too? I can tilt this and I can get to that area in a much more specific way, you know, just by moving the card in a direction that's the most conducive for the application of that ink. So you don't always have to work upright, in other words. Say, like if I want to get right here, it's just easier for me to turn the page upside down and I can get right on my intended targeted area. Okay, really defining some of these mountain peaks here with a little bit of tone. Kind of just getting right on that silhouette of them. Okay, so I just want those mountains to kind of be silhouetted against the background a little bit more. See how that looks? When you do like that. And then you can come into these areas of the design too. I have dark and light areas on the design, and I'm just kind of going in there and reiterating that shading convention. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a mystery. Just if it's darker in the design, you just add additional tone to those darker areas. Okay, that's like taking. You can just like take your cues from something visual. It doesn't have to be kind of theoretical or something like that. You know, just make it visual. Where it's darker on the design, just add more darkness to it. And there's some very specific areas that I've done that in. I've taken great pains to shade and darken and lighten really specific areas of these designs for a kind of maximum effect, you know, with the idea of someone potentially shading those areas, you know, in their projects. So I always want to give them kind of a nice head start in terms of potential areas by which they can, you know, kind of employ those types of techniques like shading. Alright, so there we go. That, I don't think I used brown yet. That's one of my favorite browns of any brand. It's just the Marvy brown. It's kind of bright. It's definitely very warm, but it kind of mellows out certain types of areas where they're not so, you know, super bright. It kind of mellows it out, but it still doesn't detract from the maybe a glow, you know, that we like in these pieces. It'll still glow going over it with this one. It won't dull it down. It's so weird. I'm usually stamping something in the foreground for these pieces, but you know, there's not going to be like plant life or something like that I'm going to be stamping in here, so I just have to go with whatever I get and have that, you know, that's going to be the statement there. So I can't do like plants or something, you know, trees or something. Okay, but now, that being said, okay, so I've lost a lot of the details up here, okay, like those little rock textures and whatnot. So this is what we're going to do to compensate for that, okay? We're not going to be stamping like overhanging tree limbs or something like that, or trees up in here that are really super dark. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our same stamps again, and we're going to layer imagery into those areas in a darker tone. Let's just go with black. Now on these ones right here, I can tell I'm going to have to really kind of allow this to dry a little bit before I blend these in further. Okay, so let's go like this. I'm not trying to stamp it directly over my previous impressions. I'm just going to layer this in. Okay, so hopefully this shows up against that background. Sometimes when you're stamping kind of wet into damp, you don't get very much of an impression because it acts like a kind of a vacuum of the ink. You stamp wet into wet, you pull it off, and all the ink comes right off too, because it didn't allow it to transfer. But that's transferring pretty good there. You see that kind of darker area right in here. So we're kind of creating depth that way. Okay, we're doing it not through a different stamp, but we're doing it through different values of the same stamp. Darker impressions look closer to us, okay? See that there? darker cloud so we have a little bit of depth right in that space there, right? And let's go back to, let's see, here we go. Let's take this tiny rock stamp right here, and we'll put that down here in black. And create a little bit more depth in these given areas, okay? I'll go for multiple impressions so I'm getting kind of different values out of the same, just one inking maybe in this case. Okay, so that was just one inking. I didn't even have to do it. Didn't even have to ink up several times. So those rocks down here, how it goes from dark in the darker areas, and then I just stamped it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And by that fifth impression, look how light it was in the lighter area. Okay, so hopefully we've created a little bit more depth that way. Hopefully there's more depth in the sky, and more depth down there in that lower elevation. All right, now, okay, I'm not gonna be lazy here. I just feel like going right into it, but I think I am going to allow this a little bit of time to dry. I'm going to give it about 5 minutes just to set up, okay, because it is quite saturated with tone at this point in time. And I want to be able to streak some other black across there without all that just completely smearing and blending in with my applications over the top of it. All right, so back in 5 or so. All right, we've given it a little bit of time to dry, and the page is a little bit moist. Okay, I mean this is not wet to the touch here by any means, but the paper still has a little bit of moisture content, especially in the darker areas. But you can tell the colors do tend to dry dull. Marvy's not so much, but the other ones do. And that's when I'm talking about when you layer them, like as extreme as this. A quick spray with some spray sealant, though, will bring back the full vibrancy of any type of ink, so I'm not even worried about that. But I can see some more contrast between the black impressions that I just stamped and the background tones that have been laid down there. So anyway, let's continue on. A lot of times when you kind of, wait till things dry a little bit, sometimes there's other things that can be revealed to you, like, maybe I might want to go, or I might want to go more extreme, or you can say, I think the scene can take a little bit more intensity or something like that in a given area, and then you can just add more to it. But like I said, these areas within the piece will get more intense with spray sealant, okay? But we'll just add in some extra anyway, okay? This is the red. Again, it's kind of a warm red by Marvy. The cherry red's kind of more of a neutral, and then there's a crimson. Crimson. Gosh, I don't even know if I have it anymore. Yeah, it just occurred to me I don't have one of my inks. It probably, I don't know, the pad probably disintegrated. That'll be one of those inks that I forgot what it was. It's crimson something, but it's kind of more of a neutral red. This one's a cherry red right here, kind of a deeper red. Let's try some of that. Yeah, it's a little bit darker. I don't know if we'll be able to tell very much difference between this and the previous one, but we might. It's a little bit darker. It's a little bit more. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a cool red. I don't know what it is. Maybe I don't know what it has in it actually. Maybe a little bit of violet, or something like that. I guess, which means it has a touch, just a tiny bit of blue. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Sure, it's just a darker red, maybe. The plum maybe has a little bit of violet in it. And that's what this is. Okay, so I'm going a little bit more intense than I kind of thought I was going to on this one. I don't know, just when you see that kind of glowing kind of surface quality starting to appear with certain types of levels of ink intensity, it tends to get a little, I don't know, kind of seductive, where it's like you want to just keep adding more and more, because you can see this kind of rich, deep saturation kind of coming about. Okay. All right, dare I use it? This is magenta. Let's just do it. We'll add it kind of in the darker areas. I can see a little bit of a change. Look at all that ink that's on my paper, my blotter paper. That's what happens when you go for these kind of extreme types of saturations. Sometimes the paper, the blotter paper itself can end up being kind of somewhat interesting in a kind of an abstract way, back there. It is kind of working in a given color scheme, so those colors that, on that blotter paper do have something in common in terms of being in a, similar color family. All right, so that was the magenta. Oops. I'm getting fingerprints all over in here. And it's because I'm holding the edge of my card right there, so let's kind of blend that in a little bit. I got it in some of those areas. All I do is just take a gel pen, I'll just tone that right out, so it's not too big of a deal, but I do love that glowing red down there. Look at that. All right, let's go to black. I think it's time. I do love adding all these different tones and kind of watching things happen, but I really do enjoy, especially when I get to some of my darker tones like this, and watching kind of the extreme contrasts starting to come out, when you go to your darkest of colors. It kind of brings out the lighter areas down there. Kind of having the top of that mountain go right into the darkness up top of whatever sky or space or whatever. Can add a lot of tone to the Brookside boulders right here. Those foreground elements. Since I'm not adding darker bushes or trees down here, I'll just kind of make this foreground element a little bit darker, so it just kind of pulls it forward a little bit. It creates a little bit of a silhouette shape on some of it, but we'll have it still rounded as well, so we want kind of dimension on objects. See that right there? It still captures that light right there, that glowing light. I'll try to go as dark as I can in the upper right and left corner, just to make it really rich and deep. Okay. Okay, a little more tone down there. Put a little shadow at the base of this rock over here. Or, I don't know, a little hill. Could be a mountain. Alright, switch that. That is one saturated surface right there, to say the least. Alright, I think those little smudgies on there need to be addressed. Okay, let me get my fingers to a little bit. Yeah. I want to go with some other tones down here. Now this is, like I said, this is the brightness of this is going to come back around when I spray seal it, but I want to see it right now in terms of the finished piece, so I want to add some additional tones down here. I might brighten it up even more with some additional, maybe yellow or something like that, and really just jack up the whole thing. In a good way. I'm talking about increasing, not ruin it. Okay. Getting a lot of this color out. Boy, there's a lot of color in here. These sponge tips right here, when you use these, it's like basically turning these into a stamp pad on a stick. So what I do is I just kind of wet a paper towel, or if I have a lot of these, and I do have quite a few of these that need to be cleaned out at this point in time, what I'll do is I'll just take them over to the sink and just kind of dab them out. And, you know, really rinse them out thoroughly, then I'll squeeze them out. See all that ink right there? Alright, I need to wash these out completely. I'm not going to get down to an amount that's, you know, completely clean for my yellow unless I take these and really rinse them out in the sink, so let me do that. Okay, so here's a paper towel right here. I really rinsed my tips out pretty good, but there's still some ink in them. It just comes to show you just how much ink these hold. I mean, I guess that would be, you know, go for any kind of sponge tip applicator, but it really comes to show you just how much is in there, which makes them, you know, very convenient to use. Boy, there's a lot of pink in there. It's like kind of spotty. I saw that kind of pinkish tinge in one of my my white pad. I wonder if it's from one of these colors that I used. Yeah. It's almost like it's a solid. I don't know. Maybe I should have just used a paper towel and gone in there. There's still a little pink in there. I want yellow in there, though. Alright. Never mind. Let's just go with this. I don't know. Are these in short supply? You know, I was doing all these demonstrations and all this stuff started going down with, you know, people just kind of hoarding paper goods. So, I don't know, maybe paper towels now are suddenly, you know, that's not such a, you know, viable option, you know, for crafting if you can't get paper towels. But anyways, one paper towel goes a long way. All right, this is mustard seed. Let's check out. Well, let's not check out mustard seed right now. Let's check out yellow. Okay. kind of, I'm not doing this to apply ink on this. I'm doing that to kind of rub down. I guess you can kind of do this before you apply ink in here, you know, just to kind of, I guess that would be smarter. Go like this to your paper towel and then ink up, you know, maybe, I don't know. Okay, so let's go like that. And let's see, let's get some of this intensity in there. Look at that. Yeah, pretty intense. Let's look at that glow. All right, now, I mean, I'm kind of addressing that little smudgy in there. It's not getting rid of it, but it's just making the area around it a lot more intense and kind of extreme. It's one of those things, like I said, if you want to kind of increase the intensity of any of your colors, brands of inks, etc., you can just throw in kind of a, you know, something like, you know, like a Marvy yellow into greens, reds, oranges, whatever, of any brand, and it will kind of increase the intensity of it like this. They do tend to dry kind of dull, like you saw there, and it will, but I'll just spray mine, and that'll solve all of that. Okay, so let's just go over the whole thing with yellow, and let's get a pretty good indication of what this will look like after I spray it, or just before it dries, you know. That really picked up a lot of the black too on there. It's wiping off some of the inks that are already on there. And probably a lot of that black that had been applied up there. So, alright, so we have that. Now let's go in and start to address some other things. This is a fun process too. It's not tedium. It's very kind of, you know, relaxing in terms of a process right here. But going for some of the colors, similar to the color scheme that we have utilized in the scene, I'll go for some browns and oranges and kind of dull. What color is this? Potato brown or something. Okay, what I'm going to do with these alcohol pens is just go into some of my shaded areas. And this is a good way to go in. Let's see, that one might be a little bit dark. Let's go a little bit lighter. Yeah, I like this one. This one's orange, they call it. Alright, and I can just go in and just kind of reiterate some of the shaded areas on the designs, you know? So you can do it with dye-based inks, but you can also just kind of blend in using some additional marker colors, okay? This one's standing out a little bit too much, but that's what we have our, you know, we can also do some blending in with your pens as well. Your blender pen. I don't really use the blender pen too much. I just kind of use a lighter version of the colors that I'm using. So let's go with a really light one here. Apricot, okay? It's very light. It's almost, you know, invisible, but it works great to blend in similar tones, browns, oranges, whatever. You can use this as a blender pen, just a lighter version of it. Just kind of spreading out the darker or more intense colors within a piece or within a given space, okay? So I go dark and then I go light, or sometimes I go light, then dark, then light again. Right. This won't blend in. Sometimes it looks different because it is alcohol over the top of dye, but when you spray this, it'll all take on a uniform type of surface quality. Okay, this is sepia. Okay. Just adding this into some of these shadows on the mountain. Kind of keeping in mind, the lighting scheme of this. Just in general, we're keeping some areas a little bit lighter towards that little horizon light glow. You can use this down here at the base of these hills. You can use in the foreground here and some of the shadow areas. You can get into much more specific areas with them. A pen like this too. Alright, now I'm looking at this and kind of assessing as I go along. By the way, these are Marvy alcohol markers, and this one's a Shuttle Art one. Marvy La Plumes are single-sided. The Shuttle Art ones are double-sided. So use whatever ones you have. You can use your more kind of name brand ones. Those work fantastic. And these ones aren't bad, though. These ones are like 50 cents each. All right. Let me blend that in a little bit more. This is just a very light version of something. It's like a very pale salmon pink, okay? It's all kind of within that same color scheme that we're working in, right? Okay, let's see if we can kind of bring this around a little bit more. All right, now I've totally cleaned off my applicators. Now suddenly I'm going to go back to black with it. But yeah, let me use my... All right, that one already has black on it. One of my other wands. Okay, so let's go in, and I want to add a little bit more shading to certain areas. Like at the base of these hills, I think it could stand to use a little bit. Okay. I don't put too much. This is kind of like some final touch types of applications of ink. Okay, a little bit darker on the corners. I'm kind of inclined to put something else in here and just change this from Mars. I think it would look really grand to have some figures sitting here overlooking this valley. So I might do that. Since I'm not kind of under assignment to make a Martian landscape, we can kind of do whatever we want, right? It might kind of be that final touch in here that might look really good. Okay. Okay, a little bit more tone over some of these mountains. Hmm. Maybe something really small right in here overlooking that valley. If I have space, I don't know if I have space. Okay, I need to take a look and see what I have here. I might want to strengthen this area right in here is kind of a... I should have kind of blended that a little bit more. Let's put a little bit of tone into some of this again. Kind of darkening this little area right in here where those two mountains come together. I think that looks a little bit better. All right. Okay. I think I know what image I want to use in here. Possibly, I'm not sure. Okay, I found some imagery to use in here, and it goes contrary. Well, I don't know if it's contrary, but it's going to be changing up kind of the initial impetus of this scene as far as like a kind of other planet type of thing. Although you go to some areas in this country and it feels like you're walking on a different planet. This will, I don't know where this would be, but I'm going to put this writer right in the middle here, and it'll go right in that little area right there. It's almost spotlit, just perfect for some image. It has to be small enough, though. I don't want to use that. The larger writer would be more dramatic, but I don't want them going into this dark form, because you wouldn't be able to see the really good silhouette of them. Alright, so I'm going to do this in VersaFine, which is very dark and black. Okay. I'm doing this multiple times just to make sure that I have it dark enough here and I have the whole stamp impressed. It's kind of like putting little practice impressions on there as well. Okay. Ooh, I hope I didn't smear that. I kind of turned it a little bit. Nope. Looks good. Alright. How's that look? It kind of adds to it for sure. It's like a total focal point now of the scene. You spend all that time and you spend, 5 seconds on one image right there and it, becomes like the focal point of the entire piece. But that's the way it goes in scenic stamping, This could be an 11 by 17 piece, and if you put that figure in there, it'll draw the viewer's eye directly to that. If you have any kind of living creature, and especially a person, if it's an animal, whatever. Okay, so I am going to put, this isn't going to represent something that's like this towering, branch, but it'll represent kind of this branch that's really close to us in the foreground, overlooking this area. So, yeah, I think I want to do that. Okay, nice light, even pressure. This is really thick ink, this VersaFine, so it's very slippery of an ink as well. Okay, you see that there? I really turned down my exposure of my camera here. Let me see. There we go. Well, kind of. And we'll balance it out with another impression over here. here. I mean, ideal it'd be leaning the other way, but we'll do it this like this. This is called Spooky Branch. Oh, the writer is Lady Writer Small. All right. Kind of frames the figure off a little bit, huh? All right, here's another one right here. This is called Crooked Branch. Just basically a leafless branch. Could be like a tumbleweed or something like that. I'll put another one right in here. It doesn't really read very clearly. It's just kind of some extra texture over the top of that rock. You know, because the rock is so dark at this point in time. Okay, I think that is it. You can almost stand to use a little bit of a star there, can't it? Coming out kind of after twilight or whatever. It almost looks like a fire on the horizon. But kind of more as a metaphor for kind of a deep sunset. Let's add something over here. Let's put a couple little stars in the sky. I'm going to do it in yellow because it's just, white would stand out in here because there's just no white left. Okay. Yeah, I'll go with something like that. It's a little bit of texture up there. Maybe a little bit slight bit of some visual interest. Okay, that is that. Scene for the day. A little bit of a different type of scene, I guess. It's real similar, though, to the composition that I did for these crepuscular rays, you know, and it's a quarter-page scene, tall peak, rocky peaks on the side. I just had them reversed, and the other one had these light beams coming from above. Let's get some of that glare out. There we go. So that's what it looks like. Kind of a flame on the fire in the valley. Or fire over the valley. Okay, anyways, hope you enjoyed it. Oh, okay, so, sorry. I just noticed something. See, when I have it like this, you probably can't see it, but you see that kind of nice glow behind that mountain back there? You know, when I get the glare out of it like that. Kind of the overall piece. Okay. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. Hope you enjoyed the scene. Thanks for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.